Assalamu alaikum students. Today we will start the very important topic of the course, that is semiconductor physics. This topic and this course will be important for the students of physics of class 12 and the students of electronics. Now before we will study what are semiconductors, I will tell you a very important fact, that is, when the first computer, known as ENIAC, was developed in 1949, this computer, imagine this computer was of the size of 1800 square feet. 1800 square. And this computer took 70 hours to calculate the value of pi. Now today, if I will take my smartphone and you will take your smartphone and you can calculate the value of pi, I think in 0.10 seconds. Right? This development occurred because of the semiconductors, because of the material known as transistors, known as MOSFET. Now, in order to study the transistors, in order to study the MOSFET, we have to first study what are semiconductors. Now, in order to study now the semiconductors, we need to study first of all the classification of materials. We broadly classify materials into three types. One is our insulator. The second one is semiconductor, and the third one is conductor. Now we can classify these three materials on the basis of various properties. But here I will use two properties only. The first is that insulators, all of we know that insulators, for example, a plastic rod, a wooden stick, they are bad conductors of electricity. That is, their conductivity, which is denoted by rho, it is equal to 0. Okay. And the second one, which are conductors. Conductors are good conductor of electricity and heat also. That is, they conduct both electricity and heat. Now the semiconductors have the conductivity which lies between these insulators and conductors. So on the basis of conductivity, I have classified the materials into three. One is insulator, second is conductor, and the third one is semiconductor. And the second property is that I will classify, this is very important property, right? I will classify these three materials on the basis of energy band, right? Energy band. Now, first of all, I have to study what is an energy band. You know, in an atom, different electrons have different energy. Okay, so different electrons will have different energy, and these electrons will occupy different levels. These electrons will occupy different places in order, and the spaces between these electrons will be very small, as small that they will appear as a continuous band like this. They will appear as a continuous band. Okay, so we have an energy band. An energy band, we have two types of bands. One is called as valence band, and the second is called as conduction. Now, valence band is basically the completely filled band. The completely filled band is known as valence band. And conduction band is nothing but it is a partially filled band. Partially filled band. Okay. Now I will show it here, right? In insulator, we have these two bands. One is this valence band. This is completely filled band, and the second is this conduction band, which is partially filled band. Okay, now in insulator and the distance between these two bands, it is known as forbidden energy gap. What is forbidden energy gap? It is denoted by Eg. The forbidden energy gap is nothing but it is the distance between the valence band and the conduction. Okay, and in insulators, this forbidden energy gap, that is Eg, is very huge. It's very large as compared to semiconductor, as compared to and conductors, right? And the second, we have conductors. In conductors, this valence band and the conduction band almost overlap each other. When they overlap each other, that means this Eg is equal to 0. By Eg equal to 0, I mean that the forbidden energy gap is 0. That there is no energy gap between valence band and the conduction band in case of conductors. But in case of semiconductors, this energy gap Eg, it lies in between the insulators and the conductors. Okay, based on the previous knowledge, that is the classification of materials, we can now define what are semiconductors. So what are semiconductors? Semiconductors are basically the special class of elements whose conductivity lies in between conductors and insulators, right? We can also define semiconductors as that whose energy gap lies in between the insulators and the conductors. Okay, now based on the material we used as semiconductors, now there are different materials, like we use some materials for conductors, like different metals. We use some materials as insulators. Likewise, there are some special, as I already defined, special class of elements which we can use as semiconductors, and those materials are of two types. For example, if I use a single crystal, a single element, like these are very important materials. First is silicon. Okay, and the second one is germanium. And when we use a compound material, we have gallium arsenide. We have gallium nitride. Okay, there are many other materials also available, but these four materials, that is silicon, germanium, gallium arsenide, and gallium nitride, are the most uh, important materials which are used as semiconductors. And out of these four materials, in present era, silicon is most abundantly used material as semiconductor. Okay, because there are several reasons why this semiconductor is used. The first reason is that the silicon, it is abundantly available in the nature in the form of silicon dioxide. For example, in sand. So it is easily available. It can be easily fabricated also. So that is why this silicon material is used as a semiconductor. Okay. Now further, we will classify these semiconductors on the basis of their purity, that whether it is this semiconductor is the pure form only it consists of silicon, whether it only consists of germanium, or it consists of gallium arsenide, gallium nitride, or it consists of silicon and some other material. And on the basis of that, we can classify semiconductor into two types. One is intrinsic semiconductor, and the second one is extrinsic semiconductor. This intrinsic semiconductor is a pure form of semiconductor. Pure form of semiconductor. And this extrinsic semiconductor is basically the doped form of semiconductor. Now, what is the doped form of semiconductor? Now, in the coming lecture, inshallah, we will study here what are intrinsic semiconductors in detail. We will study what are extrinsic semiconductors in detail, and these extrinsic semiconductors which are classified into further two types, that